Hello there, Christoph here. I am re-recording a presentation that I prepared for BTC Prague a couple months ago. I didn't fully present it there because I ended up doing a more interactive format with more demo-based. But I have this presentation, so I just thought I'd just kind of re-record it. There are 35 slides or so. I'm just gonna go through it pretty quickly, but it should be a good overview of what Arke is and does. So it's an iPhone app. iOS, it's in test flight right now. It's publicly available. Go to arke.cash. You can check it out. Here's the website. Kind of looks this right now. Leans into this idea of Bitcoin as a public park, free for anyone to use and have a good time. There are 4 goals of the project. Those are also on the website, on the roadmap. Implement the best practices outlined in the Bitcoin Design Guide. There have been like 5 years of work has gone into this guide. We've seen some things adopted, but I don't think I've seen any project really try to say, well, let's do all of it, right? So this is kind of an ambition here. We'll see how it works out. Then Arke is based on Ark, specifically the Bark implementation by second. So the idea is also that, and this has kind of happened already, Bark is on mainnet now, and when it went on mainnet, Arke was there as a usable, functional wallet to for people to interact with this technology. So that's kind of worked out already. Then be creative. I think we kind of have a tendency to lean towards kind of like a fintech slick look and style, and I don't really. I think there's a much more broader expressions to expose, especially if we get into the area of consumer retail applications. So the idea is also here to push on that side a bit. And then, whether this project becomes sustainable or not, that's kind of an open question. We'll see by the end of the year, basically, to see how this pans out. It really started as kind of a prototype. We're in exploration. Half a year in or so now, things have come along pretty well, but I think that's still kind of an open question about what this should be mid to long term. Here's a matrix I came up with for it's on my blog as well. I think Apple had something like this, or Steve Jobs came up with it. I borrowed it. So if we have this angle of everyday user, power user, and payments versus multi-purpose, then Arke focuses on payments in everyday use. So you're not going to get the power user stuff with multi-sigs and all these things, and you're not going to get the multi-purpose stuff with hardware wallets and complex UTXO selection and all this stuff. This is kind of a more detailed view here, just adding another layer to each of these segments about, so for example, if someone chooses to design a product, they could, within the category of payments for everyday users, someone could focus on onboarding. The first wallet that someone uses makes it a little bit easier. Or they could focus on privacy, or they could keep it really minimal and focus on resilience, make sure it works on any device, no matter how old it is, how shaky the internet. So just kind of a point about how, I think applications should try to know what they're trying to kind of have a focus, basically. These are just kind of repeating the goals again. Already mentioned those. Then let's focus on the tech. I already said this is built, it implements the Bark SDK, the Swift bindings specifically, and it's fully native Swift UI application that so no cross-platform framework, anything like that. It's pure raw Apple ecosystem to get the best performance, and also built on the services that Apple provides, like Keychain, iCloud Sync, all these things. Architecturally, we have the application running on the user's device. Then it connects to an Arc server that is the one that facilitates the payments. And then we connect to Espora for blockchain data. So this is kind of the basics here. Then the app also uses iCloud very heavily. The recovery phrase is encrypted, end-to-end encrypted in Keychain, which is synced via iCloud. And then backups are also put in iCloud along with user data. So if you annotate, if you add like a contact or add a tag to a transaction or so, that is also in iCloud. So that's kind of the service layer there. Then Arke itself runs a very simple basic relay, and that is necessary because the application may be offline and the Arc server may have a message that might say there's an incoming Lightning payment for this wallet. Then the Arc server so first the app registers with this relay that says any incoming messages from me, here, send them to me. To this device. If the Arc server has something, it tells and then the relay says, hey, Arc server, if you have messages for this wallet, let me know. Arc server does that. The relay then sends things to the Apple push notification services, and that one then wakes up the application. So even when the app is backgrounded or closed, there's a notification system, which is, there's some very time-sensitive things, of course, happening in a Bitcoin wallet. So that's kind of what's happening here. And then ideally, over time, the Slora and Arc servers become replaceable. Ideally, there's a big ecosystem of different people, companies, teams who run these things. And then if one server goes down or people shut down their business for whatever reason maybe, or goes rogue, then it's easy to switch to a different one. And, they might compete on fees and all these things. So there's also no single point of failure there. All right. Because we're dealing with Arc, I'm assuming you know some of these things, that it's off-chain batching of transactions basically facilitated by a server that then regularly gets settled back on-chain. So you need to kind of move in and out of the Arc. That's called boarding and offboarding. So the app has two balances. There's a savings balance and a payments balance. You don't see any technical terms really. The word Arc doesn't really appear. On-chain doesn't really appear in the main UI. In some niche scenarios, these terms do come up, but by default they don't. So you have two balances. Savings is just the regular on-chain wallet, and payments, that is the Arc server facilitated balance. As I already mentioned, language is kind of important. So Arc balance becomes payments, Bitcoin balance becomes savings balance. Onboarding is then moved to payments because we have payments, we have savings. Those are the two things that we try to anchor in for the user. And then we're not onboarding to Arc or so, we're just moving funds to payments. We're moving them to savings. So it just removes kind of technical terms and just moving back and forth. It's just very easy to understand. The emergency exit then also becomes a special type of move. It's initially, I thought it could be called solo move because you're moving these things by yourself. But forced move now, that's kind of the term that I ended on. So much simpler here to work with. And here you can kind of see what that looks like in the UI. Refreshing, that's a very important thing. We have this off-chain data that needs to be regularly settled. So you have these VTXOs in your wallet that have an expiry, and that leads you to needing be active in your security. It's the same thing in the Lightning Network. If you disappear, your channel partner could force close on you, broadcast an old state, potentially take some of your funds. So you do need to kind of come online here and there in order to make sure your funds remain active. So the application tries to do that automatically for you. It kind of keeps an eye on when's a good time period to refresh your individual VTXOs. There is an under the hood view called X-ray in settings. By default, you don't really see these things in the UI, but if you want to, you can dig deep. So here's kind of a graph in this X-ray view that shows you how long these individual VTXOs have to live, and when they move into the last 2 days of their lifetime, when that refresh then becomes free. That's kind of set up for liquidity management for the server, that the last 2 days are then the free zone. And you can refresh them manually if you want to do that earlier. And that kind of ties into this whole fee thing. The application has a fee schedule view, which you see on the left. That is all the fees the whole fee system. So the different actions you can take, and then how fees are calculated. Those kind of get a little bit tricky, but it's kind of there for transparency. The more intuitive thing is the fee summary that basically looks at your whole history, everything you've done, and just kind of does some calculations. So every time you send, that goes into your send fee, and you can easily compare 0.38%, made up number here, right? But how does that compare to, I don't know, Visa or your bank or whatever you use? I think it'd be great if all wallets implemented this, so there would be an easier comparison. And then anything that's not related to send, so that's the refresh, the moves, the unilateral exits, that goes into maintenance. That's kind of the overhead of maintaining this wallet. So that's the refreshes, the exits, but also the moves. That is kind of if you think you have a bank, you kind of have a balance transfer between two of your bank accounts. That's that basically. Okay, so the refreshes, like I mentioned, the app that schedules local notification that only exist on your device. It always tries to see when's the next time one of your ETXOs goes into this free refresh window. It schedules a notification. You just tap it, and then it does the refresh for you. Kind of intuitive, so kind of trying to see if background tasks can be used for that more efficiently, and ideally, this can will not require any user interaction in the end at all. And refreshes are, if you've done some refreshes, they show up in your activity just like anything else. Still debating whether refreshes that are free should even show up at all, or whether they should be invisible. While they're happening, I think it's kind of important that you see that a refresh is happening, because those funds are then not available during that period of time. This is the big one, the unilateral exit. So if the server goes away or is problematic for one reason or the other, then you're not stuck. You have a bunch of on-chain transactions you can broadcast to kind of settle anything that is related to your funds. And you have that information at all times. You don't need to download it anywhere. It's just always on your phone. When the server's gone, it's kind of the clearest situation, because it's gone, right? It's not going to do anything. If it's unreliable, if it's spotty, it's a little bit different, because let's say, you might start a unilateral exit, but then for some reason a refresh is happening and might cancel your exit or so. You as a user kind of need to, it's hard for the application to know exactly what situation the user's in, but basically you need to kind of make a call on that one. And then if the server is malicious, they might trick you into some scenario where they can take your funds or so. That's another one. That's a lot more complex and hard to predict. So basically if you look back at this architecture here, the only thing that remains here out of all of this, everything goes away except for the app, of course, and the connection to Explorer, which allows you to get blockchain data and broadcast on-chain transactions. So that's all we're left. We can't rely on anything else here. This kind of roughly the experience. So the screen on the left here shows you in your settings, you have this forced move screen. The guy here explains you in like a minute or so roughly how the feature works. And then you start it, then you have, again, it becomes just like the refresh and sends and receives. It's a regular activity in your activity list called the force move. That's where you can kind of keep an eye on the progress. And then local notifications again and a live activity are used on your lock screen to keep you in the loop of what's happening. It is kind of a nerve-wracking experience. The server goes away, you might be concerned about your funds. So it's really important that all the communication here is really clear and people are kept in the loop. So this is the starting point. It's very transparent about what you're doing, how much it's going to cost, that it will take some time. Fees might be large. If you're still connected to a server here, it might also tell you that there's an easier way to do this. You don't need to use this feature. Have you tried this other way first? Yeah, so a bunch of warnings that are kind of contextual that are not shown here. Then once you get going, you have this transaction detailed view here, like for all your transactions. And then if you tap this progress bar, then you get a further breakdown. And for each of those steps, you can expand those further to get a lot more detail. So it's the philosophy, the approach of this application that by default you get exposed to kind of simpler ways to communicate things, just the basic, most important thing you need to know. But then if you want to, you can dig deeper as much as you want to, basically. All right, and then again, we have this live activity and the notifications to keep going. All right, there's some other things in the app, just to mention a few. If you're on the home screen and you just kind of tilt your phone forward, it switches to show you this screen here, which shows your QR code with BIP21. So if you just want to share your payment information, it's just a hand gesture away. And then it's upside down so the person in front of you can see it and scan it very easily. It's a nice gesture. There's a library called Hallmarks being implemented, which is a visualization of the addresses. The idea here is that other wallets, exchanges implement these. So when, let's say, you copy an address, you put it in your exchange to receive something, to withdraw some Bitcoin or so, they render the same visual. It gives you an additional quick visually intuitive way to see if this is the same address. Now, no one else implements this yet. That's why it's in the experimental section. But I think I'm interested in exploring this further. You can always manually back up. So you have the recovery phrase, and then there's a SQLite database file. And you can take those and you can put it in other Arke wallets and it will work just fine. So the backup is pretty straightforward here and interoperable. The user data, contacts, tags, these type of things are not in there. And that might be something I'll look forward in the future. Here in the recovery phrase, you kind of have to scratch off the surface here to see your recovery phrase. Then there's also kind of a support for multiple devices. So the end goal is that you can run this on your iPad, iPhone, desktop, MacBook, whatever at the same time. The architecture currently has to be in a way that there's one primary device that has the server connection and the other ones kind of live off of what's in iCloud. So they're more like read-only. But I think this would be really interesting to expand on in the future. To really take advantage of all the different devices that people have. So for example, if you also have kind of a simple desktop application that could help you with automating your refreshes or so. And I think that's kind of it. So as of right now, the application is in test flight, just hardening it, refining the user experience, testing it, getting feedback. The Bark SDK is also coming out with updates, as mainnet is not that far in the past, but then we will see in the fall what user feedback comes in and what the logical next steps are for this. I think it's exciting. I love working on this one. If you have any feedback, please let me know. So you can get the app at arke.cash and also make sure to check out second.tech and see what they're cooking over there. So that's it. Thanks for tuning in.